This is white ash, Fraxinus americana, in the Oleaceae family. We're going to zoom in here to the bark first, and the bark on white ash is fairly light gray, and it develops sort of intermediate furrows and ridges, and they tend to interlace. So the ridges tend to cross over each other and have almost a braided appearance. One tip for white ash is that the bark, if you try really hard, is actually spongy. And so you can indent the bark with your fingernail. It's almost like cork, almost feels like cork. White ash is typically found in moister sites, although it can be found in more uplands. You're also going to learn green ash later in the year, and so most of this is going to be comparing the two. One of the major things you should think about when you walk up to a tree is where you're standing, and that's really key for white ash and green ash. White ash is typically found on upper slopes and drier sites, whereas green ash is typically found on lower sites and wetter sites, typically closer to a river. The two can be found on similar sites, sort of in the middle, but as a general rule of thumb, white ash is found on the upper sites. Let's talk about the leaves, the fruits, and the twigs of white ash. So white ash is in the Oleaceae family, which means that it is opposite. It's deciduous and it's also compound. So remember that the compound leaves, the bud is found where the twig meets the rachis. So that's where that axial bud is found. The leaflets, each one of these individual pieces on white ash, are entire, and so they have smooth edges and this nice tip. They're dark green on top, often shiny, and the underside of the leaf is paler. So remember, for the leaves, it's opposite and it's compound. The twigs on white ash are light gray, but the key identifying features, one of the key identifying features for white ash is the bud. So white ash, the terminal bud, which is right here on white ash, is often described as looking like a Phillips head screwdriver. And it's dark gray, almost black. So these are last year's twigs, so these have decayed a little bit, but they still have that nice Phillips head look. This is a fresh twig that was cut today, and here the terminal bud is lighter brown, but it still has that nice Phillips head screwdriver look. When we think about the leaf scars on white ash, they're often described as C-shaped or often U-shaped, with this bud indented or sitting down in that leaf scar. The other thing to look for in white ash is the seeds, the fruit. So it does develop these nice winged samaras, and on white ash, which is what we have here, the wing is typically the same width as the seed of the samara. So the seed is here at the bottom, the wing is at the top. The wing is the same width as the samara. Compared to green ash, the green ash wing will typically be wider than the samara. Excuse me, the wing will be wider than the seed. The wing on white ash typically stops at the beginning of the seed, whereas on green ash, it often extends over halfway down the seed. So key identifying features for white ash, and again, we'll review this when we compare green ash to white ash. Think about where you're standing. If it's on an upper slope, a little bit drier, it's likely white ash. Remember that all of the ashes are deciduous, opposite, and compound, and that combination of opposite and compound is key. Remember the Phillips head buds, terminal buds, Phillips head screwdriver, and that C-shaped or U-shaped bud scar that sits around the bud, and with the bud almost sitting down in it. So that's white ash. Be on the lookout for green ash later in the semester.